It's nice to see you again, and today we'll be talking about something that we mostly don't talk about. Or if we talk about it, we should talk about it in relation to other people, or other people tend to ask you that question for their own benefit. But it's a conversation that must be had, so let's have it. Today, the question we're addressing is, what do you do when you find out you are wrong? And so I'll throw this question out here to those who are with me. Let's have it. What do you do when you find out you're wrong?
I would like to answer first, but really,
Fire and brimstone there. You add fire and brimstone.
gaslighting.
You gaslight the person.
Yeah.
I mean
Because
that's a
you
fair
can't be
enough
wrong.
answer. You can't be wrong. I like that. Anybody else?
That is subject to arguments, I think, because you can't say you can't be wrong all the time.
Well,
But you're wrong.
that was nice. And so I just wanted for us to experience what happens in real life. Some of us gaslight people without even realizing that we're gaslighting them. Some of us have been gaslit, and I guess we didn't know what the phrase was, what the term was, but now we know that gaslighting is a thing. That was all done in good faith, but the truth is it does happen. However, we want to be better people, we want to be more responsible. Gaslighting is not the right way to go. Gaslighting is a sign that you're not a responsible person. You're not willing to take responsibility for your actions, and nobody deserves to endure you while you gaslight them. Newsflash! So today we're going to carry on the conversation and discuss this on different levels. So let's start with when you find out that you're wrong in the context of a relationship, whether with an acquaintance, a friend, or someone you're not even close to. I'm going to turn my attention now to the person I have with me who is going to do justice to this conversation with us. Kike, what do you do when you find out you're wrong?
With which level of relationship? Because you actually mentioned a few. You said acquaintance, you said friend,
Someone you're not close to at
someone
all.
you're not close to at all. Someone I'm not close to at all, I'll just probably be like, it's like, oops. Like, if it's an acquaintance,
Mhm.
I might acknowledge.
Okay.
Might.
Is that a strong or weak might?
It's a very weak might,
Okay.
actually. I might actually acknowledge it and say, if you were offended by what happened,
But that's kind of like gaslighting, though.
I apologize.
That's gaslighting because you were wrong.
It depends. It's a context thing.
The context is that you were wrong.
Period.
Yes, you were wrong.
Was I?
You were.
So if I was, then I apologize. But if it's my friend,
This is not about if now. This is since you were wrong. I mean, to be honest, if you did that with me, I'll
That's
tell
why-
you that since you are wrong,
do you know what?
you need to apologize.
It depends.
Or you need to accept.
That's
and
why I
take
say it depends on
responsibility.
like the level of relationship.
But
with the
why?
person. To be very honest with you, like, well, maybe this is something that I need to like check out a little bit. Like,
Mhm.
if you're just an acquaintance and like maybe you're offended by something that I've done, I might acknowledge it, but I might not. I'll just be like, oh, yeah.
So you're in 3 cars. You have 3
Yeah.
different cars, 2 different instances.
Mhm.
And you fought in those 3 cars.
Yeah.
However, the occupants of those cars are different. In car A, you're with people you don't know at all,
So strangers.
strangers.
Okay.
Car B,
Mm-hmm.
you're with acquaintances, let's say 2.
Yeah.
And in car 3, you're with a friend. You farted.
Yeah.
You polluted the air.
Pow pow.
How do you handle the situations?
So to the strangers who I know I will not be seeing again, use my earbuds, and I carry on with my life.
Like an IG model.
Like an IG model. Walk with a walk. Body shaped like a Coke bottle. And then for the acquaintance, I would say, oops. And then for my friend, I'll just laugh. Because I'm like, hey.
Wow.
Hey.
Wow.
Hey, because we know each other. Like, it's a natural phenomenon. And for my friends, it might not necessarily be like a wrong thing. It just means that, it is what it is. My
No,
body said,
for me as your friend, it is wrong to just fart in the room.
alright, cool. I'll be like, oh no.
I mean,
Do you know what?
Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your honesty. However, I feel like this is why these conversations are important, because
Yeah.
where you feel like it's okay, where you assume that it would fly, again with different friends, right?
Yeah.
Some things that may fly with some friends may not fly with other friends. Generally, I think farting is considered to be rude. There are certain bodily functions that you don't do with an audience. Farting is considered to be one of them. It's like body odor. Body odor is rude.
Whoa, those are two different things.
It is rude. And they're the same thing.
Those are like two different
They're
things.
both
No.
gaseous emissions from a person.
All I'm saying
They're
is all I'm
rude.
saying.
I'm just saying here that self-care is also care for
Well, are
the
you saying
environment.
farting is not self-care?
I'm saying
Or
that
farting is a lack of self-care, sorry.
I'm saying that farting without care for the person
This is a form of
around
care.
you is not okay.
Depends on the person anyway, so I see your
So
point.
we come to another critical point, which is perception.
Mm-hmm.
People generally have differing points of opinion. They have differing points of I guess varying points of perception, right?
Yeah.
So what I think is a no for you may be passable, okay, forgivable, or even just funny.
Yeah.
Right? And so this then begs the question, what is the boundary?
Yeah.
Because gaslighting essentially is, in some cases, right, is perceived as, well, in cases where perhaps the mistake or is genuine, in quote, you have people saying, oh, I thought it was okay, right? And so I would say it's a perception issue. But on the other hand, gaslighting generally is when you're not able to accept responsibility for what it is you've done wrong. So maybe let's move on.
And you're manipulating the person into...
You're simply not taking responsibility for it. So
manipulation is not part of gaslighting?
So this is where the issue is. In gaslighting, usually the person will say, you're misrepresenting the situation, this is how it was. And then the person typically says, well, sorry that you feel that way. The thing is, you're not attending to your behavior. You're attending to how the person feels. That's where manipulation comes in. And so the issue is not so much the manipulation. That is secondary. And that is what's compounding the issue, which is, I've pointed out to you that you've done something that is not correct or something that I don't find acceptable.
Right.
Rather than taking responsibility for that, you're turning it back on me to say, well, you feel that way. Sorrows, prayers, And so I want to ask you, how do you sort of manage that?
I think at the end of the day, you need to know who you're dealing with whenever it comes to offense.
You're typing. It's just me. Thank you. Okay, let's go.
So I think at the end of the day, it kind of depends on who you are dealing with when it comes to offense. There is a grace you would have with your friends, mostly when it comes to offense. There's a grace you have with your friends that you might not have with an acquaintance or a complete stranger. And so there's a different way you would treat each category of people. The grace you have with your friends is that they, to a large extent, know you, understand you, and might be willing to make excuses for you. And so I would say personally, the way I draw that boundary is I don't overly interact with acquaintances and strangers.
Right.
Because I find that my kind of personality, personally, it's acquired certain times.
How do you mean?
In the sense that a lot of people don't like me upon first meeting me. I have had people say, oh, that you're very loud, or you're too playful, or you're too this, or you're too that. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. And so I know that I cannot interact with this person or this person or that person. And so I would only interact with my friends. And sometimes people now say I'm rude because maybe I go into a gathering and I focus on just my friends and just interact with my friends there and maybe not pay attention to the other people, mostly because I'm already aware sometimes of how people perceive me on first meeting and all. So that is my personal boundary. My personal boundary is I don't interact with strangers and acquaintances, which is why I said when you mentioned that if I fart in front of an acquaintance, I'll be like, oops, but I wouldn't go further because I don't interact with them, you know, or I don't interact with them to the point that would start getting into what's it called. But then if I have had a few occasions where some people have said, oh, this offended me.
Right.
And in my perspective, which I realize is not necessarily the point here, but in my perspective, I didn't do anything offensive. You simply, I don't know how to put it.
Okay.
You just,
Maybe we should pause and let me ask another question
Okay.
for clarity. Would you say that it's fair for that rule to apply to others in relation to you?
yeah.
So you're fine with people maybe avoiding you, for example.
Before you get to know who I am, yes.
Okay.
Before, like, so do your own study and
Right.
look at this person, interact with their friends or the people that they're comfortable with. And if it's something that you want to engage in, or if that's the kind of person you don't mind engaging with, then go ahead and engage me if you like it. And if you don't, you don't need
Keep it
to.
moving.
Yeah, keep it moving. Because at the end of the day, there's no need. And I find that I used to do this before, and I think we spoke about it earlier, kind of just saying, oh, this person is not my friend. And then someone will be like, but this person said that you are their friend, do you get? And then you now say, oh, is that so? You now relent and become their friend. Then down the line, you'll be like, I
We're
should
really
not
friends. Yeah.
I should not have opened myself up.
Right.
So yeah, at the end of the day, my boundary is I don't engage.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, in a situation where, for example, say I introduce you to a friend, and in that interaction you're inadvertently rude,
Yeah.
and then you're giving the feedback, how do you work with
I would
that?
apologize because of you, actually.
Okay.
Because of my friend. Because I realized that doesn't just have to do with me personally. It has to do with your relationship with the person. And if that person is important to you, surely there must be a reason why. So I will apologize to the person because I don't, because that would be selfish of me.
Okay, so let me go back to the question again.
All right.
So you were inadvertently rude. Your friend pointing it out to you
Yeah.
is feedback more really for your benefit, because the truth is perhaps they're able to hash out things with the other person. But they're giving you this feedback because you have misrepresented yourself. There's barely any opportunity for someone else to kind of say she didn't mean it. Do you understand? Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
And so the question is, how do you walk that walk? Because if you do it for your friend's benefit, in a situation where, for example, it was just an awkward situation with you and two other strangers, but you were in the wrong. Maybe
Clearly?
someone, yeah,
Like
clearly,
very clearly?
very clearly. This conversation is hard, but it needs to be had.
I mean,
Fine. I think we get.
But you get you.
I think we get the gist. So, I'd ask the next question,
Go on then.
which is even trickier.
Oh,
How do you deal when you find out that you were wrong?
like I've been offended.
Are we good? Okay. So how do you deal when you find out that you were wrong in relation to something that perhaps you formed a perception about? It was just you yourself
I go back immediately.
and you alone.
No, then I make sure that like I reassess my whole mindset about it.
Right.
So it's this thing that you're saying. It's so weird because like I've had situations whereby like I think about something that happened. I'm like, oh,
Cringe.
oh no, I was wrong.
I was so wrong.
I was so very wrong, you know. And the first thing I do is I make sure that I reassess it. So I find that in conversation with perhaps the person who I was engaging with, because usually it might have to do with a person. In conversation with the person, I bring it up and say, or I go to the person and say, and this doesn't even have to do with like stranger or what's it called. If it's about a perspective, perception, and all, I come and say, I don't think I was right in my thinking here, and this is where I think I had that problem. I realized that you may have been right in this.
Or more right than me.
You were righter than I was.
I find that when it comes to addressing being wrong, like within the context of you yourself and your perception, right?
Yeah.
I find that many times we struggle.
Oh yeah.
Many times we don't kind of break through that barrier to adjust our mindsets
Yeah.
or to re-engage outwardly because they're kind of like, oh my gosh. But then again, that touches on being able to forgive yourself and accept yourself, right?
Exactly.
Because you must be able to say, bottom line, I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
I always say, I'm not always as smart as I think I am.
Right,
And
exactly.
it's been tough to take, but it has helped me in knowing that I'm not always right. So
Okay.
yeah.
So what if you find out that you were wrong about something in relation to God?
Oh man.
So maybe God said something, but your interpretation of it was wrong.
That's like, I think I would say that's the easiest to answer.
Okay.
Like I go back quick, cause like the love that God have is big. So like I literally run back. I'm like, hello, sir.
So you don't have Adam and Eve moments where you're kind of like,
Bruh, I
hid
don't have
because I was
I don't
ashamed.
have that time anymore. Because I
Right.
think I've gone past that stage in my life where I used to hide and say, oh, I have wronged you. Nah, man, anything can happen. And I literally don't have that time. I don't have that patience. And I run back immediately. Like I've even seen that a number of times during interactions with human beings. Like the Holy Spirit will be like, oh, you did this wrong. And I'll be like, sir, would you like me to apologize immediately? Or, and he's like, no, I mean, you can take your time, apologize to the person eventually, but like, I want you to know that
You were wrong.
you were wrong. And you know what? Recently, like, there was somebody that he actually told me. He was like, oh, you didn't give her a good impression of who you are because you were being very stiff towards her. I was like, okay, no problem. That's fine. But I knew the kind of person that she was instantly because of the way she was acting. And I knew that I don't want to befriend this person. I don't want to interact with this person. But Holy Spirit said, you were too stiff in the way you interacted with her. I didn't give her a good impression. So I was like, okay, no problem. And so recently, like, I had a chance to kind of interact with her and I was smiling because I was like, I don't want to be stiff. And then this young lady decided to increase the volume of, I was like, I gave it to her back, Sha. But I went back to ask for forgiveness.
Do you know, I'm actually really grateful for the level of vulnerability and openness because I think that when we're more willing to confront these conversations, when we're more willing to say, you know what, I'm going to reach out to Kike to ask her, do you have a problem with me?
Yeah.
You were rude or you weren't very pleasant when we met. I think that it helps break the ice and, you know, it leaves more room for these kinds of healthy conversations so that relationships we have with ourselves and with other people have the chance to be healthy.
Yeah, definitely.
In my own case, I think I find that I had an experience when I was really little. And over the years, I discovered that I kind of had that fig leaf mentality. Was it even figs?
Is it fig?
I don't know if it was fig leaves now, but you know, the Adam and Eve thing where I felt like, oh my God, I'm naked, I'm so vulnerable, I'm so exposed, you know, I've done wrong and I feel so exposed and gotta cover it up. And I think I found that with solving problems, I became rather individualistic in trying to solve my problems. I wanted to do it myself. And there were times when I didn't speak up for help early enough, and obviously I was the one who faced the consequences because they
Yeah.
were my
Yeah.
they were my actions. Reminds me of when I had to sing that song. Here comes the consequences of my actions, chasing me,
Me right
facing me
now.
right now. Um, but I find that I think more relationships that should have had the opportunity to thrive or survive didn't have them because one or more the multiple parties involved didn't engage it with the right mindset, which is that what, let's fix this, let's give it a chance to be what it should be, what it
Yeah.
could be. And the truth is, because of how finite life is, we don't even know what it could be. We don't know the skill, we don't know how
Yeah.
important this relationship could be.
Yeah.
Sometimes obviously we have other people filling in those roles, but you don't know what unique stamp the presence of this person in your life
Yeah.
brings. I think it brings me to one final question on this,
Go on then.
which is, I find that there are people who have different styles of approaching these kinds of issues.
Yeah.
So some people approach the issue from, in my perspective, you were wrong, and I'm entitled to behaving or responding to you how I see fit. Some people have the approach of, you were wrong, I'm willing to hear you out, but I'm not going to change my mind. Some people are like, you were wrong, but let me hear you out and let me put myself in your shoes. And maybe I'm willing to change my mind about how I engage the consequences, of this situation with you. I remember my sister saying something to me years back, and it kind of has become, something that I put at the back of my mind when I'm considering conflict in context, which is, if you're standing in that person's shoes, their actions, inactions, their responses make perfect sense to them. They're doing exactly what they should be doing. And sometimes it's hard because that principle of, if you knew better, you would do better. But someone else said to me, if they understand better, then they'll do better, because there's no guarantee that that knowledge is understanding or materializes as understanding in their minds. And so I think my question is, how do you think one can navigate that? Because the truth is, God is good and He's omnipotent, He's omniscient, but you do get to live with people on earth.
You do get to live with people.
And you do get to live with yourself.
You do. So I would say that, from my former responses, you know the kind of person personally. But I think what I would say is, I thank God for Jesus.
God, thank you.
I thank God for the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Because He will continue. So, point blank, I'll tell you, as a person that, okay, I might hear you, but I don't know if I'll apologize.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you'll change my mind.
Yeah.
It could just be, But, like you said, you will continue to interact with people. You cannot always be in conflict with the world. So I have found that the Holy Spirit is very particular now about how I treat people, especially when it comes to offending people, and just things like that. He's very, very, that's one of the things that I know He's working on my character with. We still have, a few ways to go, but we've come a long way already. So I will say that I am finding that I am now becoming the person who's saying, what was this person going through at that time? Do you understand?
Trying to make excuses for them?
Trying to make excuses. I want to thank God for the person I married, because...
Who's my brother?
I would tell him, oh! This person
is in our bad.
Did this. We're gonna blacklist them. And he'll say, "Oh, but what if?" And I remember when we were first seeing each other, he would say, "I want you to get to a point where, people who have genuinely wronged you, you are still able to make excuses for them." I was like, "Oh, this brother better be kidding." And so I would say, "You are not on my side. You're not supporting me. This person," and perhaps the person, did wrong actually, but he would say, "Okay, maybe this, maybe that, maybe this, maybe that." And so I want to thank God for that kind of person in my life, because recently somebody did something to someone else and I was like, "Oh, Boya, she was hungry. I was like, Boya. And the next thing the person turns and says, you're always making excuses for people. You don't even. I was like, oh my God. I'm sorry, what? Gross?
How the tables have turned.
Gross?
Gross. Is
Is
that
that
you?
I was like, girl, stop. Oh no. And
Yeah.
I think that is now the person that I actually want to become
Right.
fully.
Right.
Because I find that there are certain situations that I'm like, oh no, you
Yeah.
didn't.
Mhm.
You know, so that is who I want to become. I want to be the person that would say, okay, what was this person going through? You know, or maybe like you send a message like 3 days later, they never respond to you. They're like, oh, you're ignoring me. But now I'm like, oh, perhaps the person is busy. Perhaps the person's phone is not working. Perhaps, do you know what? Maybe they don't just want to respond to your message, and that's fine.
True.
You know, so I am now, again, with the power of the Holy Spirit and through association, becoming the person who will put myself in other people's shoes. Because I find that inadvertently you want them to do that for you.
Yeah.
When you kind of offend people,
Right.
you want people to
Make allowances
make
for you.
allowances for you. So I realized that perhaps my perspective was wrong, and so I need to do better. So I'm trying.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the opposite end of the spectrum for the longest time,
Yeah.
where I was willing to admit to a fault that wasn't mine. Your knee-jerk reaction was perfect. I think I had a few people in my corner who had that reaction, like, why would you admit to doing something you didn't do? And I think for me it was just, I was desperate to be at peace, not just with other people, but just
yourself.
sometimes people exist peacefully. Like, okay, so the worst case scenario is that I say I did this, I'm
And
sorry. I can't pay you back
Even if
when I can't pay you back, and move on. But I also learned how damaging that could be.
Yeah.
I've suffered very bad, incidences where my character has been disparaged or, maligned because of those situations, and I've borne consequences that, perhaps
You
were not
shouldn't
mine
have.
to bear.
Yeah.
In many of those instances, the vindication was quick. On some of them, I'm waiting. I think one of the things I've had to learn is that the form of vindication may not even look, like someone owning up to saying,
Yeah.
oh no, I kind of messed up here, and that's not really what happened.
Yeah.
But again, I've also had to learn that peace doesn't always have to come how I thought it would come, right? Which is, it might not come from the person who was wrong owning it and saying I was wrong, because I imagine that everybody likes, if somebody wrongs you, you would like for the person to say, okay, I'm so sorry, I was wrong.
Boy.
But then if it was you, you're like,
boy.
I'm sorry if you felt bad,
I'm
right?
sorry that you felt bad.
And so I feel like there is a balance that must be had.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's okay for us to admit where we are.
Mm-hmm.
It's also okay for us to not be ashamed of our struggles. I've struggled to be strong enough to, in the face of accusations and adversity, maintain a position, especially when I felt alone. I've had people encourage me to say I did something I didn't do, and I'm just like, okay, I'm so sorry.
I didn't do it, even if I didn't do it.
But I'm thankful for growth, because
Yeah.
I'm no longer in that space. I think that before things even get that bad, I'm just like, peace can be found outside of this relationship too, and it's okay to step away from those situations. I think also with God, sometimes it takes a long time. Again, it's in the moment of growth you look back and you're like, but wait, that means that thing was wrong, and you kind of feel God smiling at you like, yeah, I see you're growing. You get it now, or you understand that, oh, this wasn't punishment, this is correction, because what I used to think was wrong, and now I'm back at the place where I should have been in the first place. And this whole thing makes sense. And I think the benefit
This
of
whole
this
thing makes sense.
helps us to then be able to, in growth, say, this person is growing.
Yes.
This is where this person is at right now. And, again, you can always, like my dad would say, you can vote with your legs, you can vote with your feet. You can always decide when you say, you know what, this friendship, I can't do it. Or, I had to change the dynamics of this relationship with this person. It could even be a colleague, for example, and you just decide that you're not able to sort of keep interacting with them a
Yeah.
certain way
Yeah.
for your safety and their safety.
And theirs, yes.
I find that sometimes even with conflict resolution, you're ready to make peace. The other person isn't ready to make peace. They're not ready to resume a certain type of relationship, and those things are okay to for their peace of mind. You might be the triggering factor for them in that season. They could be yours, and so for your well-being and theirs, it's okay for the dynamics to change.
Definitely.
Wow.
I was just really thinking. I was like,
Yeah.
well, you know how the Bible says, like, the heart of man is desperately wicked.
Who can know it?
Bruh. I was like,
Yeah.
you know, when you were talking about like, you interacting with the person could be like a triggering factor. In my head, I was just like, but then you just add salt.
You know, I was also thinking when you were sharing earlier that the Bible has something to say for those who cause offense, and those who hold on to offense.
Yes.
So, in the end, you probably want to assess things and add this layer of consideration, which is we're both wrong. We're both wrong. If I leave you offended, the Bible talks about if your brother is offended toward you, it's your responsibility to fix it.
Do you know that I never knew this?
Right.
But every time I read that part in Matthew where he said if there was offense, you needed to.
If your brother was offended,
if your brother was offended by you,
leave your offering.
You need to leave your offering and go back. I always thought it was like if
you're offended,
like leave your offering. When I read it again, and I was like, hold up, I'm sorry, words.
Exactly. So I think that it's a good layer of consideration to keep, which is that the other person is not always the only person who's wrong.
Yeah.
And if they're the only person who's wrong, then I'm wrong.
And you might start off right.
Exactly.
But then you can also end up wrong.
You can't, for the sake of being so right, become wrong.
Yes.
Because you can.
Because you can.
You shouldn't, I should have said. You shouldn't, for the sake of being so right, become wrong. Because you can very quickly become wrong. Be in the wrong.
Definitely.
Oh wow! Well, this was deep, but it was much
nice.
Needed.
I like it.
It was much needed.
It's very needed.
Surprise hug. It was much needed. I'm so grateful that we had this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
I hope that everyone who's seen this episode gets to reflect on how they engage when they're wrong, when they've had a wrong perception of God, of themselves, of others, and build up a willingness to quickly reduce, the response time, quickly respond and fix up when things are wrong. Well, until next time, I remain your host. It was nice hanging out with you and you today. Yay. See you later. Bye for now.